Well, now we're moving into the squat rack, a piece of equipment that is at most gyms, but probably not at your house. In the likely event that you don't have a quality squat rack at your home, I've put together a series of videos on rackless barbell lifting, which will cover how to get into position for your classic squat rack exercises, the press, the floor press, which is a variation of bench press, the front squat, back squat, and Zercher squat. So all of these tremendous barbell strength training exercises are accessible without a squat rack. All probably to the slight detriment of performance in the target exercise, but with a slight increase in overall performance as a human because of the modifications necessary to get the bar into the rack position. We're going to lead off with the press. The rackless version features a muscle clean in order to get the bar from the floor into the rack position prior to your press. In the rack, we don't need to worry about that muscle clean, but we do need to get our starting position locked in very solidly. For most barbell exercises, the grip that I end up taking for a conventional deadlift is the grip that's appropriate for the exercise for me. I'm not sure if this is universal, honestly, but it's something that has worked out for the majority of my students. Another way to find that grip width is to perform a push-up. And where your push-up feels strongest is probably where your grip's going to be strongest for your press, your bench press or floor press, your barbell row, your front squat, and possibly your back squat, although you might need a wider grip depending on shoulder mobility. So my push-up with grip or conventional deadlift with grip, I'm going to get my hand tucked in against the bar at this angle, wrap around, and then corkscrew my elbows in to bring my hand into a more neutral position. That seems like a much more complicated setup than simply grabbing the bar with a neutral hand position. But the reason I want to grip the bar that way is to bring my lats into play right away. The lats are a tremendous stabilizer for your pressing exercises. They can also be turned into a synergist for your pressing exercises. So I call it taco hand, where the bar is sort of riding right where a hard taco shell would be sitting in your hand. With a push-up width or conventional deadlift with grip, then corkscrew the elbows in. Now when I get into position for my press, I want the bar to be against my collarbones or just below, and my elbows to be in front of the bar. Now this may be a little uncomfortable. By already engaging the lats and then twisting my elbows forward, I'm really packing my shoulder blade down, and if it feels tight, I might end up getting some lumbar hyperextension when I'm getting into that position. Another concept in the setup for the military press that helps actually throughout the press is to, once you get your grip set and the bar set, think about sort of lifting the sternum up instead of laying back to get into position. This creates thoracic extension rather than lumbar hyperextension. There will probably be some lumbar extension when you start your press, but if you keep the bar and heels in line, in a straight line of gravity, and crush your glutes and use a huge breath to reinforce your trunk stability, that lumbar hyperextension will not be costly to your body. Taco hand. Corkscrew the elbows in, get the lats engaged. Place the bar just below the collarbones if you can, or right at. Elbows in front of the bar, and think about lifting the sternum as you stand up with the weight. Step back, grab the floor with the feet, corkscrew the legs into action, big glute contraction, focus up, big belly breath, weight on the heels, and press. As I'm coming back down, I'm lifting my sternum up to the bar. Am I still on my heels? If so, press. If my weight starts to come forward onto the balls of my feet, I'm probably going to start pressing forward, which not only is going to challenge my balance, but also put a strain on my rotator cuff muscles that I don't want when I press. I want the load on the heels throughout the press to bring the strongest muscles of my body into play to support my press. Rack and walk in. Now some of you may be hypermobile and get your wrist into too extended a position on the barbell. For me, that's not a problem. My lat/shoulder mobility and wrist mobility are pretty well matched so that I'm not going to get into wrist hyperextension. If the bar is not over the wrist, if it's behind the wrist, then I'm going to end up putting some compressive/extensive force on the back and front side of the wrist, respectively. I mean, if you do push-ups, you're already doing this. You might need wrist support, especially if you're hypermobile. You can use the crush grip as one level of support, but you can also get wrist wraps to go around your wrists to give them some support when you're doing pressing. Do the best that you can to get into an ideal position, that is with the bar directly over the elbow and wrist. But if you're still getting into extension and you're having a nice strong press anyway, maybe just get some support so that those connective tissues in the wrist aren't flying so low. The best way really to understand the extension that's part of the press, the hip extension, the lumbar extension, the thoracic extension that's part of the press, is to go back to the concept of the wedge that we used in the deadlift. In the deadlift, we're wedging the hips into the bar to put the legs underneath the bar, between the floor and the bar. In the press, we're trying to get the whole body between the floor and the bar. And so we've really got two wedges. We've got our body, which is kind of a curve that's going to start to press in as long as we still have our weight on our heels. And we've got our elbows that are going to wedge between our shoulders and the bar that are going to press slightly back. Now, you're not going to end up with the bar pressed back behind you. If you do, you'll lose your balance. It's just not very likely that you'll end up in that position. But having the body in a slightly extended curvature, supported with a big belly breath and a strong glute contraction, is going to be fine. If you're strong in your kettlebell press and you're strong in your barbell deadlift, you're ready to do a barbell military press. It's yours for the taking.